Okay, sorry. Anyway, so yeah, they're talking about all this mumbo jumbo that I don't understand what they're saying, and like we're gonna go to this place, we're gonna go do this, we're gonna go, whatever. And I'm like, okay, let's go do it. So we get there, and there's me, Randy Jackson, some white gentleman. His name was what was his name? I don't know. I forgot his name. There was some hillbilly name, not being prejudiced or anything, but he had some kind of hillbilly name, and he looked a little bit like a hillbilly. He wasn't the smartest of men, that guy, but he was nice. He's a very nice guy, but he just wasn't the smartest, is all. So I need to find a cave. I'm like wandering around right now, not doing much of anything. I'm just kind of in my own world talking, and I need to find a cave. I might go to that. I don't know where that lava hole was. So I'm just going to find another hole to burrow myself into. I hear zombies. So that must mean I'm close to a cave. I heard a bat too just now. So, I'm just going to start digging. Wait. Nope. Don't need to. Found it. Yes. What was I saying? But yeah, it was me, Randy Jackson, this guy this white man that wasn't super smart, and some other guys. I forgot, who exactly they were, but we're there, and we're at this conveyor belt, and the conveyor belt had giant steel beams on it, right? And it was basically what it was is like they melt steel at this steel mill, right? They melt it down and they make it into bars, like steel bars, and then they put it on this conveyor belt to cool them off. Like there's water that they're spritzing on top of it. At least that's what it looked like to me. I don't work at a steel mill per se, so I don't exactly know the whole process, but to me, from what I could tell, that's what it was. They're melting it down. They melted it down into a steel bar. They put the steel bar on this conveyor belt, and then as the conveyor belt's going, they're spritzing it down with water to cool it off because it's like, molten steel. So we're at this conveyor belt, and underneath the conveyor belt is like a ditch. It's all outside. We're not inside a building. It's all like it's like under like something, like a big metal roof, but like it's not. It's basically outside. And underneath the conveyor belt is a ditch. Now the ditch was filled with steel shavings, and they varied in size from like most of them were like super tiny, but they varied in size from like the size of my hand to like they have bits that were like literally the size of my head, just big old steel shavings and bits. And whenever they were in this ditch, and that was from them spritzing the water on them or whatever, and it was just like it's just wiping all these shavings off so into the ditch. And so what we were supposed to do, what our job was to get down into this ditch filled with steel shavings. The ditch was probably like 3 foot deep, and I don't know, it was like 30 feet long. Like that's how it went all along the conveyor belt. The conveyor belt was probably like 30 feet to 40 feet long. And so we are supposed to get down in this ditch with a vacuum hose connected to the truck and suck out all the steel shavings. I know, that sounds fun. And it was not. It was not fun. I know it sounds fun. I know it sounds like the most fun job in the world, but it was not. We get down into this ditch on our hands and knees because we can't stand up. We're underneath a conveyor belt in a ditch that's only 3 feet. So we have to crawl into the ditch, and just we're on our hands and knees the whole time with this vacuum hose run underneath our legs. So we're straddling this vacuum hose, sucking up steel bits underneath the conveyor belt. And then sometimes the steel pieces were so, like, they've been in there for so long, they're compacted together, right? So it's like some of it's hard, like you're having to scoop it into the hose with your hand, and it just wouldn't come out, like they were stuck together. So what the people on the outside were doing, they would, son of a bitch, broke my pick. They are squirting water. They're using a hose and they're shooting water at you and the steel bits that you're, trying to get into the hose. I can't do that. I was trying to put iron ore into where the pick was. Yeah, so they're shooting water at me while I'm in this ditch sucking up steel bits. So I'm wet. I've got steel bits in my boots. I'm just a mess. The vacuum hose is heavy because it's filled with steel, and like the steel, it would like start to get wet and sticky, and like it would stick to the inside of the hose because it wasn't like your normal hose, right? It's like ribbed. Okay, it's like it looks like you guys know those toys? You might not, because I know they do a lot of those. They throw them out at like Mardi Gras. If you've ever been on Bourbon Street at Mardi Gras, they throw stuff off of floats, and they're like these little tubes. They look like straws, and you spin them around, and they make like this whistling noise. That's kind of what these hoses look like, but like they're like 3-4 inches in diameter. They're like wide. So it's like it would get caught in the ridges of the hose, and so it would just start to get heavy. They'd get stuck and it'd start getting caked inside the hose, and it would get heavy, and you'd have to cut the hose apart because it was plastic, so you could cut it apart, and you'd have to duct tape another piece of hose onto it. And that's what my job was, sucking out steel bits, and then if it got too heavy, I had to cut out a piece of the hose, cut it out, throw it out of the ditch, the heavy bit out of the ditch, and then reattach more hose with duct tape. That's basically what my job entailed. It was awful. It was awful. And I did that for 9 months. And it wasn't just steel bits that I did. I wasn't just working in the ditch. I went to many different places. The most fun place was probably Folgers Coffee. I actually went to Folgers Coffee. Not name dropping. I'm just saying. I went to Folgers Coffee, and I would coffee beans that were let's say contaminated, or just it was just coffee beans that were contaminated. They touched the ground or they did whatever. We'd suck up that stuff. We'd suck up the old coffee beans. And I remember one time there was a whole batch that was contaminated. I didn't ask how they got contaminated, what happened, but it was a whole batch, and they had them in this chute or in this bin, and they had them connected to a chute, and then they dropped them into a wheelbarrow. And we were sitting down there. It was the easiest job in the world. We sat there, and it smelled terrific. We're sitting there at this wheelbarrow. It's like me and 3 other guys sitting down at this wheelbarrow, and we've got a hose connected to a truck, and it's sitting and the hose is inside the wheelbarrow, and the coffee beans are just falling into it, and it's just sucking up the beans. And it took us, it was 3 or 4 trucks worth of coffee beans that were contaminated. Like, it was amazing. There was so many coffee beans. I don't know how they were contaminated. I don't know what happened, but I'm kind of glad they did that because, that could have been bad business for some people. Yeah, it was definitely interesting. It was definitely one of the easier jobs I've been on. Just sitting there watching coffee beans fall from the sky into a wheelbarrow while they got sucked up by a vacuum truck. Super easy. That was like a 2-day, 3-day job. So yeah. That was one of the easiest jobs. But that was my first day on the job. I just got given some pretty great advice by a man called Randy Jackson. And I was in a ditch for probably 5-6 hours just sucking up steel bits. And that did that for about 9 months. That job in particular. Did plenty of other jobs. Lime dust, steel bits, steel dust, stuff that's not particularly good for you to breathe in, but, the company I worked for was sketchy as hell, and so they didn't really care how unsafe stuff was. They were just worried about making money, and they didn't really care about the safety and well-being of their employees. And I was young, and I was just trying to make money, so I didn't really care about my safety and well-being either. I was just doing what I was told. I was just making money. It wasn't much money, but I did it anyway. Sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. How have I not run into a cave yet? This is amazing. I have yet to run into a cave. I'm gonna hit bedrock before I find a fucking cave. I'm gonna start branching out, I guess.